Hi guys, it's Saturday and we're gonna do some fun stuff this weekend. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing some resin, but I had a couple of comments of people saying, "But you weren't gonna do resin anymore." But it's not the the pouring of the resin normally, but what I still will be doing is the mosaic sort of pours. So I've cut two pieces of glass, really narrow pieces of glass and long, and that's where I'm going to put the mosaic on and then pour with the resin. Also, I'm going to show you how I do the jewelry. That might be fun. So I'll do it from A to Z, exactly how I do it. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people, because a lot of people ask me about it, what do you do with all your squishes? And these are squishes and swipes and all kinds of stuff, and some are really pretty, like this one. These are all dried up. This one is kind of interesting. So I have a lot of those, and as you can see, some I've already took out some parts to make some jewelry. But this is like the best stash. These I have boxes full of this stuff. But I have sort of went through them to see which ones are the prettiest. And as you can see, I don't put anything between them. It's not really that much of a problem. They do stick a little bit, but as you can see, they don't come off. So that's perfectly fine. See that? Nice and white on the back. So that's okay. These have been stuck on each other for, I don't know, maybe a year. But there's no problem in taking them off. See that? Nothing to do with it. So when they're totally dry, you can put them on top of each other without thinking of that it's going to ruin anything. So went through a lot of colors, and there's lots and lots of them. Okay, so what I do. First I want to show you another one I did. This is a little thing I framed, and I would like to talk about this just a little bit because maybe some of you are going to do this. So I cut out the hearts with a punch out of these cards. So I do, when you're doing the pouring, make sure you have a stack of paper that you can put the rest of the paint on, because it always comes in handy no matter what you want to do with them. You can take pictures up close, like macro shots. You could do this, frame it. You can make jewelry. You can stick it on something like a box to make it into some sort of art. You can cut this out and put it on a panel and finish it off with the resin. And everything really makes it really useful, right? Okay, then I want to talk about this. Now, these three hearts, I did a background with watercolor, and this is the real watercolor, not the Vallejo, because Vallejo is really intense, and I knew when I started this that it shouldn't be too intense, because then it'll take away from the hearts. But as you can see, the background is way too intense, because then the focus isn't on the hearts, but it's on the whole thing, if that makes sense. So when you're doing this, I would suggest that you don't frame just straight away, but make a few backgrounds. And of course, this is stuck on there pretty much. See, with a little bit of sticky tape. That's that. But this is way too intense, so I'm going to do another one, which is much more lightly colored, and then I'm going to frame it again. This is a nice little frame. I see that was still wet when I did some of it. Oops, got to peel this one off. But I'm sure you get the idea. And I don't have anything that is really lightly colored. Can't use that. That is ugly on the back. But I'll do that this week, and then I'll show you the difference. But a good thing to do is make a couple of backgrounds, put them just on like this without the tape or glue, and just see, you know, if you like what it's giving you, because it's very important that the background doesn't overpower what you put on it, because then it looks okay, but not really totally something that I would sell. So enough of that. Now, when I'm doing my jewelry, the thing is that you have a lot of stuff, and sometimes you have really big swipes like this, and you're thinking, what can I do with it? Pretty dirty on the back too, this one. But you don't really get a grasp of what you can do with it. So what I do, and I've shown this before, I cut out the sizes that go into the settings, and when I then put them on top, you get a much better idea of what it's going to look like. So you can just find something that you find appealing, that you think is pretty, and then you can start to cut it out and put it in the settings. Here I have the bigger one. I use that size a lot. But you can just go through this, and it's something fun to do on a rainy day. You put all your squishes on a table, put on a nice TV program, and you start going through them and just take a look and see what would really appeal to you to make some jewelry. That's kind of okay. Kind of like that. This is sort of a wintry sort of thing. That is kind of pretty. That one's really pretty. And I think I'd take it up here like this. That is kind of nice. See that? But I hope I'm making clear, you know, what I'm looking for. Let me zoom you back out, guys. Let's see if I can do that. There you go. That's better. So that way you can sort of on forehand know exactly what you're going to get. Because with the Brother Scan and Cut, as you know, first we scan in the background, and then we can place the cutout. We can place that on later, and so we get exactly what we want. And that's the cool thing about the Scan and Cut. That is kind of nice. That one's kind of nice too. But you should take a lot of time to do something like this, because there's even just slightly pushing it up like I'm doing now. See that? It makes a really big difference. That one's kind of, I like that with all the cells in it. Okay, well, you get the idea. So right now I'm going to find one or two, and I am going to go upstairs. I'm going to cut it. This is kind of nice because it has that metallic in it. See that? I kind of like that for jewelry because it just has an extra dimension because it shines so much. And I think I'd even add just a little bit of glittery stuff on it too. Nah, not that way. Let's see. Oh, that makes for some interesting. That makes it kind of interesting. Yes. Well, you get the idea. Oh, and I wanted to talk to you guys about Van Gogh and Gauguin and Picasso, because I went through. It was something like 8 episodes of each artist. Ooh, that is cool too. Look at that. That is beautiful. So I went through 8 episodes each of every artist, and I'm telling you, it blew my mind. It did. I was sitting there, my jaw dropped open. I was thinking, how is this possible that I didn't know this stuff? But I sort of thought about it, and the thing is, in art school, you get to learn about, you know, the cubism and the I don't know how you say it all in English, but you know, all the streams of the ways to paint. like the pointy thing. Then you have surrealism. Well, I won't name them all because I think that's a bunch of hogwash anyway. Yeah. But you don't really learn about the artist himself. So there might be just one or two little things they talk about, but not the whole how they were born and how they were raised and the brothers and sisters and when they got married and the things that happened to them. And I'm telling you, it blew my mind. It was unreal. So the whole Van Gogh thing, he was a cuckoo pretty much very in his young life. He always had a little thing with mental health. And there was even a time where he was, and this was in Holland, where he would run through a village and do all kinds of crazy stuff. He would smack women on the bottom and he would scream and do stuff. And that sort of caused that they called him crazy. And it wasn't from a SOA, sexual illness. It was because they checked that when he died. His brother died with gonorrhea, but not him. That's pretty too. But there's a lot of controversy about his death. So they say that he committed suicide because he wasn't allowed to be buried, within the church. The church said, get him out because he committed suicide. We don't do that. You can't be buried on holy ground. And you can't have your burial in the church because we don't do that with people that commit suicide. But the thing is that he was shot sort of from an upward height down, and he was shot in the stomach. It went halfway up his chest into his stomach. But the thing is that they sort of did a sort of a, I don't know, not a pathology thing, but someone said he was shot from a distance, from more than 5 meters, because they could see that. And there's no way that even if he shot himself, the trajectory that the bullet went through, it was impossible to do yourself. So, and then there's this story that tells about a couple of kids that lived in his village that always sort of was on his case. They put a live snake in his painting box and threw him with eggs and all kinds of stuff. They were really nasty. And one of those kids had seen the Buffalo Bill show, and that guy was so overcome with the Buffalo Bill show that he ran around with a revolver, and he was dressed halfway like a cowboy. And they think that he shot Van Gogh because Van Gogh came home. Someone asked him, what's the matter, because he was, sort of in pain. And he said, well, I hurt myself out in the field where he was painting. And he went to his room and in bed. And they never found the pistol. They never found his paint box. They didn't find his easel and no painting. So everything was gone. And no one ever found a pistol. So that is kind of crazy. If you're committing suicide, they could go back and they would find the whole place where it happened, right? But they didn't. And the curious thing is that the guy, dressed up as a cowboy, the whole family split the same night he got shot. They just packed up and left. And that is really, really funny. So that sort of blew me away. But anyhow, he died, and that's it. But the interesting bit is when you see the documentary of Van Gogh and Gauguin, they really mingled, together. And Gauguin, that guy, I just can't say another name for it. He was a pedophile. He really was. He married a child in Tahiti when he was, I don't know, I think he was 40, 46, something like that. and he married a child. She was 13, and he was always sort of, he didn't go to the burial of Van Gogh, and they were best friends, but I can understand that because there was really weird stuff happening, because Van Gogh wanted to put up like a sort of, how shall we call it, like a community where a lot of painters live together, work together, and then that's what Van Gogh wanted to do. And his brother, who always supported him financially, even helped him to buy a house and make that house into something that all those painters could come to. And Gauguin one day came to that house. But then sort of the problem started, and Van Gogh and Gauguin went at it, and they had a lot of, because a lot of alcohol was involved. In those days, they drank absinthe, and if you know anything about that stuff is really bad. So you might want to check out absinthe. It's stuff that really makes you cuckoo too. So then all of a sudden, Gauguin would wake up in the middle of the night, and there was Van Gogh standing at the end of his bed, just staring at him. Really creepy. And then they'd have a big fight, and Gauguin would just say, well, just, I'll just leave it, and he would walk away, and he would hear footsteps behind him, and he'd turn around, and he would see Van Gogh standing there with a razor blade in his hand. Crazy, crazy stuff. And this is all documented. So I'm not making this up, guys. This is really in the documentary, and they even showed papers and letters and all kinds of stuff. And so Gauguin went away because I think he was just creeped out by Van Gogh. And he just left and did his life somewhere else. But when Van Gogh committed suicide, all of a sudden his paintings got recognized, and they got worth more money and all that stuff. And Gauguin was sort of, I don't know, he was pretty much following it from abroad, because he went to the Panama Canal. He helped on the Panama Canal thing. He got really sick there too. And then all of a sudden Gauguin thinks, you know what, I'm going to commit suicide too. And this is all documented, and he drinks, I don't know how much, arsenicum. And if anyone knows arsenicum, that is like lethal. And they're saying that he just made that up, and that's not true, but that he wanted to have a little bit more recognition, and by trying to do a halfway job committing suicide, the attention would be to his paintings and all that kind of stuff. And one big mess, really. If that's what it takes to be an artist, I'd say not my cup of tea. So put those two aside. Then you come to Picasso, and Picasso died 1973, somewhere around there. And he was the richest artist during his lifetime. And when he died, it was unreal how much money the guy had. And the funny thing is that his oldest son lived just a couple of kilometers away from him, and he was living in poverty. And there you have Picasso having millions and millions. I think they were talking about billions even. And his oldest son was just living in poverty. Then when Picasso was really, really old, something like 91, that's when he died. His grandchild wanted to visit him, and he was I don't know, 14, 15 years old. He got on his little moped, went to go find his grandfather. They called the cops on him, and the cops just threw his little moped bike away, and he came home crying, and he was really, really sad. Then when Picasso died, he left most of the money left to his oldest son. And that guy just told his children, you're getting nothing. You are getting zero zippo nothing. And that's when his child drank a liter of bleach because he couldn't take it anymore. And it took 3 months before that kid died, because all of his intestines were burned with the bleach, and it was agony. And then in comes the really cute part, the part that I think is really, really sad. Maybe I should do a Picasso thing, because it's kind of interesting how the women he all had and kind of stuff. I could do a whole video about that. But then the woman he asked, he was married really early with a ballerina, and they split up, but she didn't want a divorce because she wanted to still be named Mrs. Picasso. But eventually she died. Then he went to a woman who had a child with him, and he said, I want to marry you. And she said, well, I don't want to marry you because you're 30 years too late. And this was Marie Teresa, and she stepped up. So when that child drank the liter of bleach, she reached out to the mother of the child and said, can I help you? And she said, oh, please, we have to get him to a hospital in Paris, but I can't pay for the transportation, and someone would have to pay the bills and everything. And she said, you know what I'll do? Because they reached out to the widow of Picasso, but she just gave them the middle finger and said, I don't know, I don't want to have anything to do with you guys. But then she said, okay, I'll sell my Picassos, and I will make sure that your child could go to Paris and, you know, maybe get healed. But he died before he even got there. And the money went towards the funeral and to help the mother of the child. So that was kind of really heartbreaking. But she hanged herself too. So she couldn't take it anymore. And I'm talking about the one that didn't want to marry Picasso. She committed suicide. She put a piece of rope around her neck and just ended it. And eventually the widow of Picasso also committed suicide. That's kind of really weird. But it was one big mess. When he died, it was one big mess. Unreal. Okay, guys. I am going to go upstairs. I'm going to cut out some of these pieces, and I'm going to show you how I make jewelry. Be right back.